Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Smith, and you have tuned into YWCA's Enlightened Conversations. Enlightened Conversations is a program that we run at the YW to provide an opportunity for people to interact on issues of great importance to the community, particularly those that revolve around racial and social justice. We hope through this program that we can interact, get to know each other a little bit better, and find out what we can do to make our area a better place to live. What we're talking about tonight is one that crosses all the barriers that we have discussed before: racial issues, social class issues, gender inequities, sexual orientation. We're talking tonight about substance abuse. And substance abuse is the one issue that impacts everyone: rich, poor, Black, white, Latina. It doesn't matter. If you're a human being, you have to know the issues surrounding substance abuse, because either you or someone you love may be involved in this type of problem. So we're going to look at it tonight from three different perspectives, and that's why we have three speakers with us. We have Pam Gay, who is the York County Coroner, and Pam's going to address the issue of the impact of what our area has lost due to substance abuse. How many lives have we lost over the years, and how has that changed over recent years? We also have Chief Chad Martin from the Hanover Police Department. He is shown there with the C. Martin. Unfortunately, the police did not give him a camera, so we're going to rely on his voice to tell us what's going on. And then we have Christina Martinez, who is with Open Arms Recovery, and she will talk about the hope at the end of the road. The fact that there is hope, there is treatment, and there is a way out for people who feel like they are stuck. So let's open up first with Pam, and please be aware that as each person is speaking, they may be speaking to their particular issue. But if an idea comes into your mind that you have a question about, feel free to jot that down in the chat section of Facebook, and Lou, our trusty man behind the camera, will take care of getting it to us, and where one of the presenters will address it for you. So Pam, what can you tell us about the impact locally of substance abuse? What are the latest statistics for us on drug-related deaths?
Well, we actually have an annual report that we put out every January. And I have a lot of questions right now about how COVID impacted us. And so our drug overdose deaths during 2020 were a total of 204, which is the worst it's ever been in this county, unfortunately. And we do believe that they were exacerbated a little bit significantly during COVID. We were starting to see a trend up in February of last year. That trend has continued even up through last month. And so year to date right now, we have 60 overdose deaths suspected. Some of them are confirmed. We have 32 of those that are confirmed. We're still waiting on the other 28 actually. But our overdose deaths are still trending higher than the previous 2 years. So we had seen a slight decrease in 2018 and 19, but unfortunately, in 2020, we saw those deaths increase significantly. We ended up with 60 more deaths last year than we had the year before.
Was that 60, 60, or 16?
60, yeah.
60, okay. Yeah. That's phenomenal. That's
we
the
were
jump we don't want to see.
Anywhere from 19 to 22 a month.
Deaths.
And we were starting to see a trend down in January and February of this year, but March we had an uptick. Unfortunately, we had 24 overdose deaths in March, which is probably, I believe, the worst that we've ever seen in the history of the coroner's office. So, but right now, as I speak, April was better. So, it's fluctuating right now, which shows us that perhaps we're seeing a little bit of an improvement over
We hope.
that steadiness that we had seen all during 2020.
Yeah. So it goes up and down and up and down, it sounds like. How does this compare to maybe 10 years ago?
Well, 10 years ago, I went back to look at some of those numbers. There were 46 drug deaths in 10 years ago. So,
Wow.
compare 46 to 204.
Yeah.
It's pretty significant difference. 5 years ago, 95. What we were seeing when right before I became coroner in 2014, we were seeing an increase in prescription overdose deaths. And then by 2014, that's when our heroin deaths spiked. We went from 17 the year before to 60 some the next year. So that's where we started seeing this trend up with the heroin deaths originally. And then now we see mostly fentanyl in almost all of these opioid deaths.
Fentanyl.
Yeah.
That's the big one now. Yeah.
And I do have the Penn Township and Hanover numbers for last year and this year, if that would be helpful.
That would be great because the numbers you've been giving us thus far are county-wide, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Can you break that out then for Hanover?
Sure.
And
so in 2020, Hanover Borough had 12 overdose deaths and Penn Township had 4. And in year to date right now, we have 6 attributed to Hanover Borough that occurred in that area and 3 in Penn Township. So we're still seeing, obviously, a problem in Hanover. It is definitely, along with some other areas in York County, an area where we do see some of the overdose deaths occurring. But obviously, I think it would be a lot worse if we didn't have the Narcan in the hands of law enforcement.
I was going to ask you about that. When did Narcan come on the scene as far as years? What year did that?
Okay, so Narcan started being used by York County Police in April of 2015.
Okay.
And it actually was used countywide. We were among the first. There was, I think, one other county, it might have been Delaware County at the time, that was using it countywide with all their police jurisdictions. So we were among the first, and I will tell you that the chiefs embraced it and went back to their officers. And it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing to give Narcan to people again and again, especially when you have repeat issues with people repeating overdoses. But it's once you understand the effect on the brain and how just being saved with Narcan isn't going to necessarily convince somebody to go into rehab. We were very fortunate in York County that law enforcement understands this and tries to work with the York Opioid Collaborative, formerly the Heron Task Force, and a lot of other entities to continue this very difficult task. I always call it sort of an unconditional love type of thing, because you have no guarantee that person's going to go get help. And they may curse you out, but law enforcement is there to do it and save lives, with the hope that this might be the one time where that person decides to go get help. It's not an easy job.
No, it's not by any stretch of the imagination. So I don't know if you can do this, Pam, but can you give me an idea of what your typical overdose situation might be? Is it generally a certain age, a certain gender, or is it as broad as our population is?
Well, we have both male and female, but we do have more males than females who are overdosing and dying. Of course, I'm talking about the deaths.
Right.
You have to talk to Chad to find out more about the actual those that survive. But mostly more males than females, although we are seeing females obviously overdose and die also. Believe it or not, the average age has crept up, and I was actually even surprised myself when I was doing a little bit of research. But we used to see people in their 20s and 30s. We are now definitely seeing people in their 30s and 40s more than people in their 20s and early 30s. And that has changed over the last couple years. And so, yeah, the average age right now for 2020 was 39 years, which is probably
39
hard for some people to believe. Yeah.
Right.
39 years.
Yeah.
So, Yeah, and they come from all walks of life. Some of them are a lot of them are just out of rehab and recovery themselves, or out of prison, so they're very vulnerable. And sometimes they only have to use once or twice after being, you know, basically abstinent for so long, and that can be enough to kill them. So that's what we see typically. Many times, families will tell us, "Well, my goodness, he was doing so good, and look, I can't believe he died because he just got a job, he was doing great." But unfortunately, they succumb to some of those same, triggers from when they were using.
Mm-hmm. From the little bit that I've read on the topic, that's one thing that seems to be consistent is the vulnerability of someone who has just recently gone through a recovery process, and the fact that your body kind of resets and no longer needs the amount of drug that you once took. And we don't always recognize that. And therefore, when someone does break down and take something, they take the old dose, what they used to take,
Right.
and it's too much for them. So is that what you see?
Yeah, we see that a lot. We see that a lot. That's very typical. We have people who overdose together and one person survives and the other person dies. And then we've had people who overdose together and both of them die. So but that is classic. They think they have it under control. They think they'll be able to use just once and quit. Even though they know that they weren't able to do that before, they'll go ahead and do it and try. And they think they have all the tools because they've been in recovery. And unfortunately, they succumb to the effects of the drugs.
It's kind of basic human spirit, isn't it, to think that we are stronger than we think we are. That we can definitely take care of anything and it won't get me, but sometimes it does.
Fentanyl, he says it's so powerful, and I think sometimes people just forget. I mean, we've been warning them for years that fentanyl's in this stuff, but they just don't realize the strength, like you said.
Yeah. Chief Martin, can I turn to you for a minute and ask what the impact is in the borough from a legal aspect? We've heard from Pam about the deaths, and it's like a 3-to-1 comparison, the borough to Penn Township. But what about drug arrests for those people who the law has caught up to them, but luckily their body is still intact?
Sure. So obviously over the last 3 to 4 years, we've seen an increase in our actual drug arrests from a low of 72 arrests in 2018 to a high last year, actually in 2020, of 103 drug arrests for the year. And that entails simple possession and possession with the intent to deliver as well. So far in 21, we're at 22 arrests as of the end of March. But that doesn't always just answer the question totally, because you have other crimes that are associated with drug addiction and drug use. DUIs, we are seeing a lot more driving under the influence arrests that are straight drug related. And it's not just necessarily illicit drugs, it's also prescription drugs, as well as a combination of alcohol and drugs. So far this year, 66% of our DUI arrests are a combination of drugs or drugs and alcohol. That's about the same as last year. We had 60% of our DUI arrests were either straight drugs or a combination of drugs and alcohol. A lot of times theft and burglaries are committed to support a habit. They're committed to support a habit. And again, it's across all walks of life, all social statuses. You find children stealing from their parents, their grandparents, to pawn items off on the street to have money to buy drugs. Public drunkenness arrests. When I first came home from the job, it was alcohol was the big factor there with public drunkenness, but we actually are seeing now about 25% of of our arrests are, straight related to being intoxicated because of the drug factor. So it's a whole realm of crimes that we see day in and day out that drugs push. And
Is it hard for your officers to tell the difference when someone is acting erratically, to tell the difference between whether or not they're intoxicated due to alcohol or whether they're high from some kind of drug abuse?
I think one of the big factors in alcohol is the odor emitted from an alcoholic beverage. Your body breaking that down, and so it emits that distinct odor of the alcoholic beverage. A lot of our officers go to advanced training for DUI detection with drugs, so they get advanced training to sort of detect what drugs cause what symptoms and what to look for in mannerisms. And so, a lot of times you can tell, pretty quickly, if you're dealing with somebody that's just under the influence of alcohol or somebody's, high on the drug.
Okay, it looks like Lou has a question for us.
The question for Chad Martin is, do those drug arrests include those in possession of marijuana?
They do.
Thank you.
Yes.
So possession with an intent to deliver, or being intoxicated or high, all of those are individually tracked, correct? As far as arrests?
Yes, they're part of the FBI Uniform Crime Reporting system that we report to the state, which in turn gets reported to the FBI.
Okay. Now, I'm pretty sure, if I'm, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that with the reports that you need to give on the arrests and stuff, that it probably breaks it down demographically by age and that sort of thing. Can you give us an idea? Are there more teen violators versus the young adults versus the maybe 30 and up age group?
Yeah, currently we're seeing about a 5%. 5% of the arrests are juveniles. Our largest population age-wise would be the 20 to 29 age group, and they're running between 75 and 80% of the drug arrests we make.
Okay. Why do you think the teens are such a small group? Can we be hopeful and think that they're not that active?
I think at least for Hanover School District, they're very proactive. The superintendent's proactive in education, and also the awareness that it's not going to be tolerated. They do bring in the state police for locker checks, for drug dogs to sniff lockers. That being said, it's still there. We still get a number of cases a year, and some of those cases don't necessarily go to arrest, so they're not counted. Some cases are diverted to the youth aid program, youth aid panel with the county, which is sort of like a probation before judgment type thing.
Right.
Right, to keep a juvenile that has no prior factors out of the system, give them a chance to sort of overcome that setback.
I know that the cost of drugs is a big factor in the crimes committed, because you had mentioned that about people stealing or holding other people up for money. I've heard horror stories from various parents that I know of kids who have swiped those many credit card offers that come through the mail and filled them out to get cards and purchase things and sold them again to get the money for their drug needs. So there's all kinds of manner of ways that people will work things to get the funds they need for the drug. But once they are arrested, what does it cost them then? What are the typical fines for say possession or possession with an intent to sell or to pass on?
Sure. So, for a simple like marijuana for personal use, as it said in the law, the maximum is up to 30 days in jail and a fine that's not greater than $500. And that goes all the way up to when you get into possession with intent. Depending on the type of drug that's involved, that can go anywhere from 1 to 15 years in jail and anywhere from $5,000 to $250,000 in fines. First-time offenders, again, prior record, you may end up with probation for that for a first offense of simple possession of marijuana. But that's not the only cost. They also have to worry about attorney's fees.
Right.
You know, lost wages, lost job, how that affects them down the road. So it sort of becomes a snowball effect the more times they're involved in the legal system.
Mm-hmm. Well, plus there's a mark on their record that sometimes, future employers are not going to overlook.
Sure.
And they may or may not want you, right. Well, plus there's times, future employers are not going to overlook.
Sure.
And they may or may not want you, So, Lou, do you have a question for us?
I do. Let's see. Are most offenders repeat offenders when arrested? Is rehab part of the sentencing?
Question for us?
I do. Let's see. Are most offenders repeat offenders when arrested? Is rehab? Okay. Can you hear me now?
I do.
Yes.
My apologies. Are most offenders repeat offenders? When arrested, is rehab a part of the sentencing?
I don't have a number for recidivism that we come into contact with repeat offenders. That can be part of sentencing, rehabilitation. Your county in many ways is ahead of the game as far as one of the first counties in the state is, as Pam had mentioned, as far as coming on board with Narcan. A lot of treatment courts and drug treatment court is one of those where through the sentencing process, you try to get that offender the help they need for that addiction and try to help them along in their life. One of the problems with that process, though, is it could be 2, 3, 4, 5 months down the road, with depending how quick the system works, till they get the help they need. So our police department is actually one of 3 police departments coming up, hopefully by the middle of this year, toward the fall, partaking in a pilot program with the county to try to help those individuals with low-level, thefts, drug crimes, to try to get them help right off the bat and possibly avoid the stigma of a criminal charge if they successfully complete a program. And that's through the CARD program. So that's something that I think is, benefits the community. This is definitely something we're not going to arrest our way out of. These people need help, and necessarily making an arrest and putting them in jail is not getting them that help all the time.
Right. Yeah. But you said the program was called CARD.
Yes.
Does that is that a statewide program or a federal program that you're piloting?
I'm not sure. I think it's it's been around. It's something the county is trying to institute here with our department, Penn Township, and I believe Springersbury Township as well. And that CARD stands for Community Action for Recovery and Development.
Okay. So how do you get them that help then through that program? Can you bypass that 4 to 5 month lag time that you mentioned?
Sure. So initially there has to be some buy-in from the individual. When the police initially have contact, they will go to an intake processing type facility. The police will fill out a form to forward to the DA's office. The DA will monitor how the individual cooperates with the program and the requirements. The benefit is that if they voluntarily voluntarily agree to go into the program, they get the help they need that possibly helps them to combat the addiction. At the same time, if they successfully complete and follow through everything, there may be a chance that they don't get charged with a crime in the end, which also will help them in the future as well, as far as getting a job, maybe not losing their license, etc.
That's great. That's great. So, how is that funded? Is that funded through the regular police department, or is that something that a nonprofit helps with? Or
Don't have all the answers to that, but it is a county program, so
okay,
the county's sort of in charge of it.
Okay.
The goal is to bring all police departments in the county on board to the program.
That's great. That's great. Now, when did the Hanover police start carrying Narcan, Chief?
So we would have started carrying that at the beginning, I believe, as Pam had mentioned, I believe it was April of 2015.
Okay.
So we've been carrying it since we've been allowed to by law in the county. And again, in reflection to what Pam had addressed over the COVID, what we've seen through COVID last year. Last year was our, we've seen a spike in not only the deaths as occurred, which last year was double the amount of deaths we experienced the prior year, which was 6. We also almost doubled the use of Narcan last year over the prior year. So last year we administered 44 doses of Narcan throughout the year. So far, year to date, we're up to 9.
And when you say 44 doses, that's not necessarily 44 people, correct?
I should say that is 44. That's 44 uses, not 44 doses. That is 44
Oh, okay.
use. So yes, that is 44 people.
Oh, okay, 44 people. All right. Yeah. So, but you do, I would assume you do sometimes get called and it's someone that you administered Narcan to some weeks prior, and here you go again. Is that, am I?
Unfortunately, we do see that every once in a while, and I can think of, unfortunately, one case, I believe it was 2 years ago. It was this female subject we've administered 3 times prior, and unfortunately, 4th time, she passed.
Is there a point, and this is a question either for you, Chief, or perhaps you, Pam, I'm not sure which one could answer it better, but is there a point where the Narcan isn't going to work? That your body might be resistant to it?
If they've taken enough, it will take multiple doses of Narcan and it may not work. And part of that is too how many minutes they've been without, how many minutes they've been unresponsive. So
okay.
Obviously, if you go 4 to 6 minutes without enough oxygen, it's, irreversible brain injury sets in. And sometimes those folks survive enough to get to a hospital. But then, after a few days, the family has to, make the decision to withdraw life support. And we do get a lot of those. I wouldn't say a lot, but most of our cases are at scenes, actual scenes. But sometimes we get those cases at the hospital, and they become organ donors, basically.
Right.
Yeah. But
okay.
Yeah, you're not going to hurt anybody by giving them Narcan, even if they don't really need it, if it's not an opioid overdose. But definitely they do get to a point where Narcan might not be enough.
Right. Okay. So you can't count on that,
No.
It helps, but it's not always the cure all.
And fentanyl, especially with fentanyl, you have to give more doses of Narcan than what you had to in the past. I'm sure Chief Martin can avouch to that. It's definitely more being required than in the past.
Mm-hmm. Does the Narcan come in a pre-measured, pre-filled dose for you, Chief, so that your officers don't have to stand there and try to figure out how much does this person need?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It comes, it does come pre-dosed, pre-packaged. It's very simple. You open it up, take it out of the package, insert it into the nostril, and administer. Push the tube and doing the dose and the monitor. And I think the most we've done before EMS has arrived is 3 doses already.
Wow. Yeah, that's scary. I think 3 doses, and they still may not make it, depending on the severity of the individual. Chief, one of the questions that I remember from when my children were much, much younger, now I've got grandchildren at that age, was parents asking, how do I know that my child may be getting mixed up in drugs? What kind of things do I look for? What kinds of buzzwords do I listen for? What is it that I should be kind of clued into? Are there certain phrases or words that, kids are using these days to refer to certain drugs that maybe parents won't know because that wasn't what it was called then, when they were younger?
It's a good question. I should have brought my daughters in to this. I don't know any off the top of my head. I think the big thing is, to stay engaged with your children, stay in your children's lives. Make sure you might be being nosy, but it's showing you're caring. I think one of the big issues that parents today that have to deal with that our parents didn't have to deal with is technology.
Right.
What are our kids doing online? What are they doing on their cell phones? So I think it's just to stay in touch with your kids, take notice to any obvious changes in behavior, any changes in their day-to-day routines, etc. that becomes suspicious of, and don't be afraid to talk about drugs and what they can do and with your children, and again, just be part of their lives and let them know you care, and if you feel there's issues, don't be afraid to address it with them.
Mm-hmm. And I think the schools are really doing a great job lately, the last many years, in addressing the issue younger and younger, so that because you need to keep talking about some issues with kids over and over again until it finally sets in. Lou, you're sitting there very patiently waiting for us. What questions have you?
Short question. Do any of the high schools have Narcan?
Oh.
Yes, they do. Many of them. I don't know how many, and Chief Martin can probably tell you about the local high schools, but many high schools in York County have Narcan.
And that would most probably be under the control of the school nurse, correct?
Or the school resource officer. It just depends.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Chad, can you
remember that not just students. I remember I told you that average age right now of the deaths is 39 years of age. You have parents and other folks who come to school activities when it's not a pandemic, that you have to be concerned that they might overdose. They might have substance abuse issues at a sporting event or something like that. So no school should go without Narcan.
Yeah. Chief Martin, do you want to weigh in on that? What you know of the local schools?
If I recall an earlier conversation, I believe Hanover does at this point. But to that extent, too, as Pam was talking about, the general public is now open to receiving Narcan as well. So again, that's helping the situation with having Narcan available, when a situation occurs.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that it's no longer a teenage issue, that it's more of a general population issue.
Yeah, we've actually seen people under, late 40s, mid 50s that we provided Narcan to.
Yeah.
We've seen, a death or two, in that range here.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, many of our, those that die are folks that have been using for years. You got to remember that, one form or another, alcohol or other substances. So we really have not had many young people die from opioid overdoses in York County. So we did have a few initially, but we just don't see it anymore. And that age is creeping up, like I said.
Right. Now, Pam, obviously, by the time you see them, it's really too late to get a whole lot of background information. But how much, just from what you gather, maybe from family members, or Chief, maybe you can address this. How much of that opioid abuse starts with a valid prescription for a valid use of it, and then just grows exponentially from that?
A lot of it.
Really?
does. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Chief, has that been your experience as well?
Yeah, through our investigations and, talking to people, yeah, that's, a lot of times that's how it gets started.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, these are certainly sobering statistics and scary to a point too. I think the thing that scares me the worst is the age level of people. Christina, shed a little light on this. See if you can tell us what we can do to help people. You are in charge of Open Arms Recovery Center, and that is on Frederick Street?
Yes.
Okay. So,
right next to the Turkey Hill there.
I'm sorry?
We're located right next to the Turkey Hill and Frederick Street.
Right next to it. Okay. So tell me a little bit about Open Arms. What kind of services do you offer to people?
We are outpatient substance abuse.
Okay.
So individuals that need a drug and alcohol evaluation, or they come, well, the process, I'll tell you the process first. Somebody is struggling, they come in and they do an evaluation, and then they're recommended according to ASAM, which is how we get the criteria for treatment. And then they'll recommend them to either inpatient services if they need that and are in withdrawal. We also have medication assisted treatment, which is Suboxone, Vivitrol. We also use Sublocade. We have individual sessions, group sessions. We're also contracted with York County DUI. So we end up sending in a report to them once they complete our curriculum for our DUI program. We have a Pathways program, which that's where my passion lies, with pregnant and postpartum women up to 18 months. And then we just received a grant for women, for postpartum past 18 months. We do urinalysis testing. Most of our referrals come from CYS, probation. What else here? I have a whole bunch written down so I don't miss it, but.
Okay. Yeah, because it sounds like there's a lot involved there.
Yeah. We do casework as well, if somebody needs help, because let's face it, when somebody's out there and they're using drugs, they're pretty much living to use and using to live at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of lack of life skills, such as parenting, down to, writing a deposit slip, things like that,
Right.
We have to teach them all of that. So
because their whole life is circling around that drug. Yeah,
absolutely. And then, you have them in and out of jail, in and out of rehabs. So they're missing significant parts of their children's lives. And then they go back home and they don't really have any coping skills to be able to deal with any of this. So
is that part of what got them to this situation to start with? Perhaps the lack of coping skills?
I believe a lot of it is not knowing how to handle life, and we utilize drugs as the coping skill.
Yeah, and that's the one coping skill that always backfires on us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How long has Open Arms been in business here in town?
We'll be open 5 years, July 1st.
Okay. Wow. So, and to be quite frank, I've never heard of it until I got your name and connection for tonight. So, and I think that's true of a lot of really good programs around here. They kind of operate under the radar, but luckily you're able to reach the people that you need to reach. Is Open Arms a freestanding recovery center? It's not part of a larger chain, or anything like that?
No, myself and Diane Sponseller, we opened it. So we are the founders of the agency.
Okay.
We are nonprofit.
Mhm.
We have a rate for people who do not have insurance. We are not county funded. There are places that we can send people to that are county funded, and that's normally what we would do if they do not qualify for medical assistance and can't afford our reduced rates, because we do give reduced rates. Evaluations cost anywhere between $60 and $115. Individual sessions anywhere from $30 to $70, and our group sessions are anywhere from $25 to $60. And then
Okay.
we also take, we're contracted with the Blues, Capital Blue, Highmark, and medical assistance at this time.
Okay. So people can come in there who have insurance
Absolutely.
and have things covered, but if they don't have insurance, there's also still a chance they can get service.
Absolutely.
So, okay. Lou, you have a question?
Yes. At Open Arms, how long do recovery services go on? A year, 6 months? Question mark.
Well, per the Department of Drug and Alcohol Programming, if they are in an MAT program, which is the medication assisted therapy, we have to keep them for 4 years, and they have to have at least 2.5 hours a month for the first, I don't want to quote myself here, I think it's the first 2 years, 2.5 hours, and then after that, it goes down to once a month. And then after the 3rd year, I believe it's the 4th year, that it's every other month. But
And that would be, when you're quoting those hours, that's of either individual or group therapy, correct?
yes, they absolutely have to have individual therapy.
Right. Okay.
Group, sometimes people are not recommended to group, depending
Okay.
on, there's different reasons why, if mental health is an issue and they, a diagnosis is, they have social anxiety, we're not going to throw them in a group,
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Since you've been in operation now 5 years, what kind of success rate have you seen so far?
I feel like we've seen a lot of success. I don't have a percentage for you. We have multiple people who came in, heroin addicts and, literally sick from withdrawal, that are now in college. We
That's
have
great.
parents that are, being parents. It's amazing to watch these people grow, because
That's
they're very, and then we have some people, that go, they leave, they do it all over again and come back multiple times. You just never know. We're
Do
not
you
here
get
for
folks?
have to be willing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the case with a lot of things, and maybe that's a reason why some of these ills befall us as a society, is that we are always looking for a quick fix, so something that's going to take care of the issue now, and it sounds like this is a long process. Yeah.
It's a forever process.
Forever. Yeah. It's a good way to put it. Well, Lou, you have a question?
How many staff at Open Arms?
We have 12 employees.
Wow. Yeah. And do they range from therapists to office to doctors to what kinds of staff people do you employ?
We have 2 doctors, Dr. Susan Peck and Dr. Gary Nalavini. Dr. Peck sees a lot of our women because she's an OB. So for our pathway program, all of my pregnant women and postpartum women see her for their Suboxone, if they are on Suboxone or Sublocade or Vivitrol. That's where Dr. Peck comes in. She's also our medical director. Dr. Nalavini, he volunteers his time to be one of our MAT doctors as well. He does not get paid, and he does it because he wants to help out his community. We have 2 receptionists. and the one receptionist, she helps out with the Suboxone program and I oversee it. We have, I'm trying to count our therapists. 1, 2, 6 therapists, I believe it is. And
Wow.
then we have our clinical, I'm counting our clinical soup and myself as
Mhm.
one of those as well. And then Diane Sponseller, who is our director of
You're-
operations.
Okay, yeah. How did you come to decide this is what I want to do? I want to start this organization. And did Diane come to you, or you went to Diane, or you knew each other forever and it came up in conversation, or?
Well, I'm an addict as well. And I wanted to get in the field. So I started school and I had absolutely zero life skills. I did not even know how to turn on a computer at that time. And Diane worked for another agency at the time, and she brought me on because she saw that I was passionate about helping others. So I
Mhm.
started off as a receptionist, and then the MAT started coming around, and I wanted to be a part of that because I was a very judgmental person. I judged women who were using drugs while they were pregnant until I became one of them. And it taught me not to judge. So I wanted to love on these people that are getting judged for being, choosing their own path of recovery.
Mhm.
So Diane and I, we decided that maybe we should open an agency that's welcoming to that population as well. So we decided to open it, and here we are.
Here
And
you are.
we started off with 25 clients, and now we have about 160. And
Wow.
we hold events for them. We have Christmas parties, Easter egg hunts. We're getting ready to hold a skating party for our clients' children. We want them to feel comfortable, because when they walk out into the world, there's the stigma,
Mhm.
they have that. And, it's hard, as Officer Martin or Chief Martin was saying about, they get a record, and then we have this on our record, and it's hard to obtain good employment at that time.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we are able to help them. We work along with Manpower, they're right around the corner from us, and we have an MOU with them. They help employ our clients. We utilize a lot of the services in our community, early intervention. We utilize True North, Susquehanna Counseling, cognitive behavioral health, for mental health. We make all kinds of referrals to
Mhm.
whatever the need is of the client.
So open arms might be the door that a person enters, but you provide avenues to wherever they are going to find the right fit for their help or for their need. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we will never go on a waiting list for MAT services whatsoever. We'll refer out and find them somewhere else. We do not
Find
want
it
somebody
somewhere.
waiting for the MAT and turn around and end up in Pam's office.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, we don't want them there.
No.
Right. Lou, you have a question.
Open arms. So do therapists need specialized training in drug treatment? I would add to that question, are there other employees other than therapists that also need special training?
Myself, I'm getting ready to graduate May 3rd with my master's degree in social work. DDAP, they have criteria that you have to meet in order to be a counselor. You have to be at least an associate's degree and working towards a degree, in other words, and they could be counselor assistants, which they're directly supervised for the first 3 months and then closely supervised thereafter until they are counselor status.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
and of course the doctors are licensed doctors. So,
Right.
but our front office, they have to have high school diploma or equivalents.
And a great deal of empathy, I would think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
most of our employees are in recovery themselves.
Mhm. Yeah, it's heartbreaking to me to think that one of the reasons you opened like the medical assisted treatment was because people turned for help, and instead of getting, people turned to other organizations for help, and instead of getting help, they got stigmatized for needing the help. It's heartbreaking to think that people who are experiencing a problem and pull together the wherewithal to even ask for assistance are then put down for asking for assistance.
I didn't mean within agencies, I meant within the community.
Oh, okay.
So I wanted
Yeah.
them to feel more, welcomed, because, 5 years ago, I think Pam was saying that it was that 95 deaths 5 years ago, and compared to now, so people were very shut off to MAT. It was that they would call it a crutch or whatever, and some still are. However, the way that I like to explain it is there's this big gaping wound, and the Suboxone's the band-aid, or the MAT is the band-aid, and you slowly peel it away as you heal inside and deal with all of those issues that you have.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of judgment 5 years
Yeah.
ago, because considering there was only 95 deaths, and then here in 2020 there was 204. So
Mhm.
in saying that, people became more open-minded now to utilizing the MAT services.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Okay, so that stigma was in the community at large, not so much from another agency or something. Yeah, yeah. Now, when people go on the medical treatment kind of program, is it necessary for life, or is it something that they are gradually weaned off? Like you said, the Band-Aid type thing. Is it that way for everyone, or some people have to be on this forever, like a diabetic needs insulin?
My personal opinion on this is, for instance, I had a gentleman that was 65 years old, has been using heroin his whole entire life. He thinks that he may have to stay on it his whole life, but that's kind of up to him, when he feels ready. We do not put a time limit on it, because I don't want the focus to be, oh my goodness, I have 18 months, I have 12 months. I want their focus to be working on life skills and coping skills and relapse prevention and, self-sufficiency and things like that.
Do you have I don't know how I want to say this, but like a ceremony or a point at which someone is considered graduated, cured?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And we do not put a time limit on that, because it's pretty much up to the individual whether or not they complete their treatment plan. We can't put a time limit on. It's an individual basis, so we never tell anybody how long they'll be there, because we don't know. If they complete their treatment plan and they're doing well and urinalysis testing is coming back negative, then it will be much sooner than what somebody who is consistently relapsing, because obviously they need more and maybe even a higher level of care, and then come back to outpatient.
Right. Yeah. So do you find people who have successfully completed the program and are maintaining their sobriety, do they continue to stay involved, perhaps as a volunteer or to help others through the program?
We have people that come back, and there's people who are successful that have been off Suboxone for a while, and they'll come back and share how they did it and handled the mental thing of not picking up something and putting it in their mouth every morning. They talked about how they replaced it, and the coping skills that they were utilizing at that point. So absolutely, yes, they do come back.
Yeah. That's one thing that always impressed me when I read about Alcoholics Anonymous and those kind of programs, is that those who have so-called graduated, although they never refer to themselves in that terminology, but they are always still involved to aid others. And it's kind of a community building process. I think that those who've been in those situations help bring others out of that.
I think it boils down to a gratitude thing. You're just so grateful to not have to live like that anymore. And somebody gave their time to you to help you out of that, when so many people turn their backs on us because, you know, we burned the bridges, and rightfully so, they turn their backs on us. But I think it has a lot to do with, if I give back, it's helping me as well as them.
Right. Yeah. You had mentioned, Christina, you were saying about the degree that you're completing soon, and congratulations on that. I know it's not easy to do that, but especially when you're working and managing this agency and that sort of thing. But you mentioned an organization, was it DDAP?
Yes, it's the Department of Drug and Alcohol Programming. We are licensed through them. They come in and they inspect us, and they look at our charts and make sure that we're doing everything up to par.
Okay, so an organization like yours needs to be licensed through a state entity.
In order for it to be considered treatment, yes.
Okay, so somebody can't just go open up their front door and hang a shingle out and say, I am now a drug treatment center. So there are guidelines and things you all needed to follow. And yeah.
And then we also have insurance companies that come in and they audit charts. CCBH, which is the medical assistance piece for behavioral health. They come in, they audit our charts. Fraud, waste, and abuse comes in. Quality comes in. The Blue Cross, and yes, they come in, they audit charts. And then we also have a board of directors that we have to answer to as well.
There's a lot of hoops to jump through there. Yeah. Well, I see the clock is ticking, and we're approaching 8 o'clock. Lou, do we have any other questions for any of our panelists?
We do not at this time, no.
Okay. Anything that any of the three of you would like to add or say as a parting comment?
I just want to congratulate Pam on the new morgue. I had to congratulate her.
Christina and I go back quite a few years here.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, okay.
it's been great to see her progress and all that she's been doing, and it's exciting. And congratulations on that master's.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
It's a real success story there. And I didn't realize that York County had a new morgue. So
yeah, we sure do. It's been all through the news the last 2 weeks. So
I've been focused on other parts of the news. I missed that.
That's for another enlightened conversation.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't think we'll be doing a tour or anything like that, Pam, but that's
I have slides if you don't want to do the tour.
Okay. All right. Chief, anything from your end?
I just thank you for having me on to discuss this very important matter. It's a community issue. It's going to take everybody in the community to fight it and to continue to fight it to see any progress.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It does take everyone, and that's why, even though it doesn't follow, the guidelines of racial justice or social justice in and of itself, it crosses every one of those groups that we focus on through the Social and Racial Justice Committee of the YWCA, and we felt it really needed some focus itself and some time to look at it. So I thank you all three of you, for participating tonight. And Christina, best of luck with the Open Arms Center. Chief, keep on fighting the good fight out there. And Pam, I do hope that the numbers slow down for you. So just because you have new facilities doesn't mean we need to use them that quickly.
That's right. I'd rather use them in the average way where people are living out their natural life. So
that's better, right? So our next Enlightened conversation is scheduled for Tuesday, May 25th. That would be the Tuesday before Memorial Day, and we will get you details on topic and speaker closer to that time. But then we're going to take a little break over the summer. So, but if you can mark Tuesday, May 25th at 7 o'clock on your calendar, and tune back into the YWCA of Hanover Facebook page. And we'll have a little bit of a discussion that evening. And we'll also be announcing our summer racism and social justice series. So I think you'll be very interested in what the committee has planned for this summer. So thank you all. And thank you to our man behind the camera there, Lou. And I'll sign off for tonight.
Yep. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can watch all of the Enlightened conversations. Have a great evening, everybody.